My name is Allison, and I'm an assistant librarian at the Southwest Collection Special Collections Library.
I'm Rob King. I'm an associate librarian here at Texas Tech University at the Southwest Collection Special Collections Library.
Today we are discussing our digital newspaper project and how the history of that has evolved from working with microfilm and working with hard copies of the newspapers, and then reformatting those into a digital format for people to research all across the world. Newspapers have been around as long as people have been in the Panhandle and South Plains of Texas. And so as soon as Texas Tech came and the library came, they started collecting those newspapers. The Southwest Collection began an effort to digitize these newspapers by taking them page by page and then scanning them so that they can be made available online. Some of the earliest newspapers that we decided to digitize were the University Daily newspaper, the Daily Torador, the Texas Tech newspaper, but then other ones as well, such as the Southwest Digest, which is the newspaper from Lubbock that has more African-American related news, and also the El Editor newspaper, which is more Hispanic related news in West Texas than Lubbock. And so those were kind of the earliest newspapers that we started to work on. Preservation is, at the forefront of what we're trying to do.
You can tell from the condition of papers that you might see some examples of in this video that they can be very fragile.
And so with the kind of technical aspects of the scanners, we have gone through several iterations of equipment in the time that I've been here. We kind of evolved into using, more of a flatbed scanner. We have 3 flatbed scanners, and they're each a Contex IQ Flex flatbed scanner. You can scan images that are a little bit bigger than 18 by 24 inches. And with that fits the vast majority of newspaper and larger scale prints that we need to scan for our newspapers. And so having these, we're able to scan up to 2 pages per minute. Microfilm came about, in the early 20th century and was a way to reformat documents into something that can be preserved for a longer term in an alternate format other than paper. And so it gained traction, during the 20s, 30s, 40s as a way to reformat newspapers, because a page such as this one or that one, which are, 18 by 24 inches, can be reformatted to those 35 millimeter images.
And I think that this is a method that some families may be familiar with. They might have been used to looking at their family documents on old slides.
And so you can take a whole book of newspapers like this and condense it down into, a roll of microfilm that, is, 3 inches by 3 inches. That was kind of one of the big advantages of microfilm, is because you could take pictures of that, condense it down, and make multiple copies of it, because a method of preservation is making copies of something, because the more copies of something that's out there, the higher chance of it being preserved and lasting into the future.
When we began getting into scanning and putting digital images online of newspapers, it was discussed in the library world, I think, is the next step part of this process, what we would call digital microfilm. That would be to transfer the digital image, which could be cleaner, a little bit edited, a little lighter maybe if it was too dark, and be able to put that on microfilm, reprint microfilm reels from the digital image. I think it has largely been decided that that is cost prohibitive for libraries these days, while it's an excellent form. So what we are often discussing is not just space on physical shelves, where are we going to keep these things, but online space. We have to pay for server space, I think, and even digital images take up space.
Every single one of the pages that we scan has a nominal cost to it that is a yearly cost to maintain it. And so we have redundant servers and redundant storage to store this. And so the main one, the public view of that, is our DSpace server. And so that's where the public goes to look at the images. But there's also a back end where our archive, our digital repository, that also has a cost to it as well. And so even though we're reformatting these into a digital format, there's still a cost attributed and associated with reproducing them.
There's a little bit of an outreach component to this, that we drive out to the communities, and the way that we prioritize that initially was to go back and look at what had been microfilmed initially, and then say, okay, we'll go back to those communities that worked with Texas Tech previously and see where they stand, what they need for their community in terms of digitization, further preservation. And some of that involved us making very strong reassurances that we recognize that this is their community history. And our job is not just about making it available to researchers, but respecting those members of the community, their family members that are represented here, and going back and making assurances like, if we take this apart, we will return it to the community. If we are not keeping it here, then return that back to them in a condition that that community can be proud of.
As soon as the 1930s, the newspaper collection got more robust. And we stand on the shoulders of those people who collected those newspapers. The Texas Spur newspaper was kind of one of the first ones that we collected as a external local community newspaper. You know, we still have that relationship to this day with the current owners of that newspaper. And the idea is that Texas Tech and the Southwest Collection Special Collections Library has been involved with newspapers in West Texas for a century now.
It's so easy in our positions to get kind of focused, I think, on the technical aspects of it, but there's a personable aspect to this. And I had family that grew up in Ropesville, Texas. So as we began to digitize those papers, I was able to send that to my family members and see stories about my mother. They would tell little stories about a family traveling an hour. Or taking a family vacation in the summer. I believe they went to California, and this was big news for Ropesville. So I was able to put together a little story, and my mother was able to put back memories using that searchability, because she could search the family name and find those stories. And that tells such a personable story that I think is really important about this project. Some of it is for research, some of it is about current events, but some of it is just a family story. I've continued to go to a yearly event in Cross Plains, Texas that represents Robert E. Howard. He was a famous Texas author, more known for pulp fiction and adventure stories like Conan the Barbarian, amongst many other stories, who grew up in Cross Plains, Texas, and this is in the 1920s and 30s. And so here on the table we have two examples of a story. It was a serialized story that came out in the Cross Plains paper. It was the only short story he ever had published in his hometown newspaper. And so I continue to go out and celebrate that author with community members that still remember him being alive, that are now getting older, but that still celebrate him in their hometown of Cross Plains. And that's more of a story of the community of Cross Plains.
Another example of a couple newspapers that we have here, we have a 1864 issue of a newspaper called Der Texas Demokrat, which is a German newspaper from Texas. A lot of settlers came to Texas from Germany and settled, but this was during the height of the Civil War. Paper and other resources became much more scarce. And so this particular newspaper is interesting because it was printed on wallpaper. And another issue that we have here is a issue of the Clarendon News from 1878. This is the very first issue that was printed about news from this area. It was actually printed in Wisconsin, but it made its way back here to be distributed because a lot of the settlers from Clarendon were from Wisconsin, and so they shipped their plates to Wisconsin to print, and then they shipped it back over a wagon to be distributed in Texas. That's volume 1, number 1 of the very first newspaper from West Texas and from the South Plains Panhandle area.
We would just like to thank everyone that's taken the time to watch this video and to kind of learn a little bit of what we do. That so much usually is a behind the scenes project. We're serving the Texas Tech community, the students that need these to research, the researchers, professors, And yes, community members, these are available to the public. They're not just available in-house anymore. Once we put them online, people can reach them in other countries to teach. These papers that are region-specific are unique to this area. And that is, where else are you going to go to find this material? It's just such a wealth of information and history contained that was meant for the public to see upon publication, and now we're making available to a global audience.
We don't charge to digitize these newspapers, and that plan doesn't change. And it is a part of the long history that the Southwest Collection Special Collections Library has with outreach to the community and preserving the history of various different aspects of the cultural heritage of this region. And anybody that is interested in that history has a place to go and a readily accessible method to perform that research.